Hey everybody, welcome to Applesauce and Baloney. This is a very special episode of Applesauce and Baloney. Turns out when you constantly tell your little brother everything he's doing wrong your whole life, it comes back to get you. So a little while back, we did a Dune video in which I attempted to sound like I knew what I was talking about. But my little brother, Max, who's not so little anymore and is a lot more familiar with the subject, has petitioned me for a very special episode of Applesauce Baloney. So I'm going to put on my Dunce cap, and I'm going to get ready to go to school. This is Applesauce and Baloney with a special helping of spicy white rice. I'm Eric.
I'm Thor. And down here below us is Max, who is has notes for us.
Spicy white rice, I guess, today. I can't see Eric, but does he actually have the dunce hat?
Yes, he does legitimately have a cone hat on that says Dune-CE for Dunes.
My Dunes hat. Yeah,
makes me so happy inside.
I'm
so
sure
much
it does.
joy.
I'm sure it does, little buddy. Sure it does.
So before you get into it, Max, in my defense, I have never read the books. I've seen the books on bookshelves. I know what books are.
Oh, Thor! I told you this before. I promise you, his problem isn't with anything you said. It's largely me.
Yeah, but I'm coming to this movie largely through the lens of what we got in the 80s version of Dune, which is the movie that I grew up watching. It's really the only concept of Dune that I have, which the Lynchian version of Dune.
Which you
Max
can't be
hates.
blamed because that movie too gets Dune very, very wrong.
Oh, horribly
so many
wrong
ways.
from what I've been told. But yeah.
So I'm in good company.
Yeah. I mean, as a avid David Lynch fan, I have zero nostalgia for that movie. I've seen it. I hate that movie. I hate it. Although I do defend the pugs, as silly as they are. But I get what he was going for. But
go ahead, Max. This is you. You have the floor. Please, I guarantee you, nowhere else on the internet will you find a more comprehensive and pretentious overview of this last movie than you're about to get right now.
No, you absolutely not. On YouTube's Quinn's Ideas, who is probably a Dune encyclopedia in human form. That dude knows more than anybody. But I guess the biggest thing I will say is what makes Dune special and interesting, and why I think Denny gets it, primarily because he's spoken that he wants it to be a trilogy that includes the second book, Dune Messiah. That's like his dream. He's spoken a few times about how he doesn't just want it to be a two-part, that he would like it to be the third. The three movies with the second book included is that it's kind of the distillation of the sort of the heroes, the pre-hero's journey, proto-hero's journey. But before there ever was the sort of distillation Luke Skywalker, Anakin Skywalker hero, kind of what you guys were talking about in your Dune video, what makes Dune special is that the first incarnation of that subverts that, which is weird because Dune is not a hero's journey. It's a fall arc. It's kind of what Lucas was trying to do with Anakin. Yeah, it's essentially The Chosen One it's a false prophet narrative. It's a movie about colonial tyranny and empires and how heroes are essentially there's a great quote at the end of the first book about how you should never trust or never hold a hero in high esteem, that the worst thing that can happen to a culture is a hero. And that's kind of what Paul is. And it's funny because people hate the second book, Dune Messiah, because Dune Messiah leans very heavily into all the subversions that are implied in the first book, Dune, but it's there in the first book. And so it's, when you look at, and you can tell with the way the movie's being done,
which is why you probably love the Dune 2 Messiah over the first one, because it's more of a bummer.
I don't love it more. I think you need the highs before it all gets cut out beneath you, and you realize you need to root for the tyrant. You need to understand why. Like, it's not an exclusively political piece on Herbert's part. Like, you care about Paul. Like, Paul is not it's Anakin. He's not an inherently bad person. It's that he makes the wrong choices at every step, or every choice that continues his ability to wield power.
Which is not what happens in the Lynch Dune. I mean,
no,
it's very much set up that he's the hero.
He becomes a prophet, a literal divine prophet who can summon rain from the sky. It's at the end, which I don't know where the fuck that came from. But anyway,
I really liked that about Dune. I really liked that about Dune. The scene where, very different than other versions I'd seen in film, where Paul is. He sees that. Like, there's a moment when he's like, and I'm not sure how much they go into it the book, but it's almost like he knows. Like, he's like, yeah, there's gonna be blood across the stars, all in my name, and so like he does sort of see that it's gonna happen, and he has lots of prophecies that he already sees that come true. So it's interesting that like he still fails to make the right decisions.
So, and this goes into some of the structural things, like. But yes, you are correct. So he sees instances of what he calls his terrible. It's in the book. It's called his terrible destiny, or the terrible destiny that he sees, that he gets these like visions of, and it's not until he has his first contact with the spice where he legit sees. And I'm hoping we get to see more of it in the second movie, because it's very toned down in the movie. But like in the book, it's like apocalyptic. It's just like like, you know, the blood ritual, the solder car, where you just see people getting bled out on these like things. Like, it's like that, right. But like on a planetary scale of just these people being slaughtered and burned.
Yeah, and
in Paul Muad'Dib's name.
Yeah, and I can imagine that based on how well this movie did, and the fact that they've already greenlit a sequel, that HBO is 100% on board with now giving him the leeway to do.
Well, would Denny even give them the option? Because I mean, I don't even know. Everybody I've talked to, how would you even have, like, the way he shot and finished this movie? Like, I mean, he was setting it up so that we'd be outside HBO, you know, like, you know, banging on the door, going like, what is going on?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, he's already set it up. The false prophet narrative is there in the movie. It's why when the Bene Gesserit show up and they're like, the way has been laid, and Paul has the conversation in the Thopper with his mother about how they see what they've been told to see by you, planted thousands of years ago, which is exactly how it happens. The whole reason Paul fits into this prophet narrative is because it was planted by the Bene Gesserit into the Fremen, like religion, like literally stories told thousands of years ago. So if they ever need it, they can like turn the key, click untap their entire cultural religion, and we to our advantage in any way we can. That's why they call him the Asan. What is it? The Asan al-Alib, the son and the mother from the stars.
So it's
and
not,
that's why every time. That's why every time people see Paul and they say, like, Stiglar's like, I recognize you, or she's like, how did you learn how to put on a still suit? He's like, it seemed like the right way. All he's doing is he's also intuitively doing it, but it's all been planted by the Bene Gesserit.
So it's all set up BS then. I mean, the whole concept.
Yes,
of the
that's what his mother says, and that's why he says. But that's why Paul looks angry about it, because there's that part of Paul that wants to be the chosen one. He wants to be special, and he's like, but they've been told what to see, and she goes, the way has been laid. She's literally telling him, this is your way out of dying, and he's like, but he wants to be special.
Right. So him knowing how to put on the still suit and everything that was like sort of like subconsciously, subversively taught to him by his mother and the Bene Gesserit is what they're sort of hinting at that it's not just
hinting
magical
that it's
knowledge.
Part of, yeah, they're hinting that he also is the Christoph Haderach. So he has a sort of genetic cellular memory that predisposes him to know these things. But he has studied Fremen culture and the language. He says it in the book and in the movie too. So
that explains.
He's essentially a supercomputer. He's just a supercomputer. He's kind of like a Mentat.
So that explains then why the Bene Gesserit would be so pissed off that Jessica has a boy child, because they're like, F it, you started the prophecy too early.
Yeah, so this goes into like the sort of courtroom intrigue of the novel that the movie, I think its benefit, because movies are poetry and simplicity, and novels can be as complicated as we want them to be. But like the whole, to avoid this war, the Bene Gesserit were going to marry Leto and Jessica's daughter to the elder Harkonian son, who we haven't seen yet, Feithra. Right. That was their plan.
Which is Sting's character from...
Yeah, which is Sting's character from, Feithra. We haven't seen him in this movie. But they were going to marry the two houses to avoid this war that they knew the Emperor was going to set up. And that child between those two families was supposed to be the Christoph Haderach. So you think of the Bene Gesserit as essentially doing a giant... It's eugenics. They're doing a giant eugenics breeding program over 1,000 years, and this is why there are two actual protagonists in Dune, in my opinion. Only good people. Everybody else is power and questionable motives, because even the Bene Gesserit are like doing some weird dark shit in the background. Everybody is, but like, that's what that whole thing is about, is that they were like, it's hard to say, was it in her hubris that she thought she could have the Christoph Haderach? In the book, it leans more that she just actually loved Leto and wanted to give him a son. That's like, they kind of lean into that she did fall in love with him and was like, I want to make him happy and give him a son. So she did.
And then very much the medieval politics of like, look, House Harkonnen and House Atreides have been at war for centuries, possibly millennia. So like we're gonna marry these houses together so they'll get along.
And that's why the Divine Mother even says, even if Paul is the Christoph Haderach, but he like self-destructs or can't control or dies in the desert, that they have other prospects, which are she's probably referring to the Harkonnen, the Elder Harkonnen, because they all have these things, even though the Elder Harkonnen, I always forget his name, but it's like Faith Roth or whatever.
Yeah.
But like,
I just call him Sting.
Sting. Yeah. He hasn't been trained in like the weirding way or the voice or anything like that, but he still has the sort of like genetic disposition that the Bene Gesserit are looking for, because he has to. They need to cross bloodlines.
Right. So in this, do they go into the book? Is it just Atreides and Harkonnen that have these sort of the Bene Gesserit hanging in the background?
Others. Or there's others. Yeah, but it's very, it's they don't really focus on it that much. But I believe there are other.
But we're meant to believe that the Bene Gesserit kind of has they have an inside man inside all the houses, or an inside woman.
Well, I don't know if they clearly state that in the movie, but the Reverend Mother who puts Paul under the Gom Jabbar is the fucking truthsayer of the Emperor. She's the one. She's the right hand woman. She's the one in Emperor Shaddam IV's ear. She's literally the most powerful.
Oh, okay.
One of the she could arguably is the most powerful person in the entire empire.
Huh.
She's
right because she has his ear. Kind of like a king is the king, but who's really running the king? It's the Pope.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. But obviously there's things they can't control politically, like oh shit, we do the Emperor. The Emperor's jealous of both the Harkonnen house and the Atreides house. They're both too powerful. One's powerful by influence and one's powerful by just wealth. So I'm just going to pit these two together and fight. And she's like, well, now we need to marry these. We have plans set up in case the Emperor ever thought to do that. And Jessica fucked those plans up.
And right. So for better or worse, those plans are coming to fruition.
Yeah. And then it becomes, and there's a really great moment where Leto asks Jessica if she'll care for Paul, and he's not asking the mother, he's asking the Bene Gesserit, and that's important for where things go later. Yeah. Because one of the biggest things in the books is once they realize that Paul is the Christoph Haderach, can they control him? And that's a big thing.
Right.
And that's a
because
big
now they're basically the Pope is giving his power over to a second coming of Christ, if we're going to use that allegory.
Yeah, in a way, yes, that's absolutely what it is. And I think and there's also a reason why you start to see, particularly in the desert, is where Paul, when he's in the tent with his mother, is where even in the book Paul has he gets the full like view of his terrible destiny. That's why he freaks out in the movie. He's like, I see myself and thousands of people and blood in my name. Like, that's where he sees it. And that's the point in the book where, if you notice, Jessica starts to get a little scared of Paul. Like, a little scared of him. Because they spent thousands of years trying to create this super being. And once they think they might have, and there's other complications. Like, we haven't even gotten into his sister, who literally experiences all of her entire family history's like memory before she's ever conscious in the womb, when Jessica has to drink the blood of Shah Hilud and like actually sees thousands of years in history in the womb before she even knew what, like, she was alive.
Right.
Wow.
And what that does to that girl is insane.
Yeah. So I want to stop us here for a moment, because we're way outside of the bounds of the movie. I know it kind of, it has to touch on that because the books are the movie. But I want to get us back onto what is HBO's Dune. So what's your takeaway of this movie? How did you sit with this movie as far as a Dune adaptation?
I mean, it's the best. I mean, it's the best with. I think it's. So I don't mind the sci-fi series. The sci-fi series is fun, as quirky and weird as it is, but it's pretty true to the books. Like the sci-fi series is, but they can like build it out very like Game of Thrones-esque.
Right.
And I actually think that Dune works. Denny has a very good ability to take something very complicated like Dune and simplify it in a sort of poetic way to kind of imply a lot of bigger things, that like Dr. Yue's betrayal, and rest in peace to Stockwell, who obviously played Dr. Yue in David Lynch's Dune.
I do not remember. Yeah, I don't remember that character being as important in any other version I've seen than this one.
Well, I think it works in this one, even though largely everything's kind of removed. Like in the book, it's a kind of brain exploding moment when you realize that he's not even physically supposed to be able to betray Paul Atreides or the Atreides family. He's programmed by the Emperor, and it's actually kind of a interesting take on that. His love for his wife and his desire for revenge broke Imperial programming.
Well, you
don't need it. You don't need it.
In a way, he betrayed them, but he didn't betray them, because in a way he was. It was just
and
a
he
tool
does.
to.
Yeah, and he does in the book too. He's the reason why Jessica and Paul make it out alive.
Right.
But like, it's this Dune in terms of scale and scope. Like, I have my own like, it would look like a Droulet comic where there's like giant floating statues in space and all that trippy shit if I was ever gonna do Dune. But like I was thinking about it when I watched it. I watched it again last night, and I was thinking about how, if you look at like psychedelic space worlds and Dune, you get like the Dune version of what a trippy space world would be, and then Avatar. So like cat people and blue things. And so I think in Denny's defense and it's just his aesthetic. If you watch like Arrival and Prisoners, he needs a very naturalistic core to his movies. He's always been that way.
I thought it was a beautifal, beautiful movie.
No, it's gorgeous. Yeah. It's gorgeous. It's just it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous and it's bleak. It's bleak, brutalist design. Because everything in it is designed to just soul crush you under industry.
Yeah, it was very similar to his Blade Runner.
Yeah. I mean, Arakeen looks like a model. It's dope. It looks like straight out of Blade Runner when you're like flying over Arakeen in the city. It looks rad. It's all geometric and brutalist and cool. So I think that worked. The visions, a lot of the psychedelic stuff in Dune is very toned down, and I think he's doing that in a very it's very like Terrence Malick-y, very like expressionistic views of memory. The things he does do are very subtle, like the repetition of visions, but flipping the image. So when he sees Duncan, Idaho, in the desert with the Fremen, they're looking forward, so they're looking what it would be left to right. And then when he sees it after Duncan's dead, the image is flipped where they're looking right to left. So that could be interpreted as the flipping of his vision. That could be interpreted that he's seeing one thing back through the past and getting a gleaning further insight from the past while looking forward.
They did a lot of that because I noticed
he does it a lot.
There was a confusing moment for me too where he had a vision where the one guy that he ends up killing is like, I'm going to teach you the ways, and then
so I wanted to talk about that. I'm
going to put my dunce cap back on because I need you to explain the significance of that scene.
So there's two things. That's not done in that way in the books, and I think this is something that this is something where I think the director has added and lended something that makes this that makes this in the translation of adaptation has added something viscerally much more poetic and beautiful and insightful. So it can be read two ways. Paul is seeing possible futures in which he does not make the infinitely terrible choices he makes to damn the entire Imperium to a disaster, to a what they call it a jihad in the book. In the movie it's crusade. So he's seeing a possibility where he could have been friends with this man. This could be the man, his brother of the desert, who's going to show him the way. Or it could be extrapolated like a dream. And there is that in the old speak at the very beginning of the movie. Dreams are messages from the deep. Because that's the coolest fucking way to start a movie ever.
But yeah, that scene really jumped out and surprised me because I hadn't remembered seeing any other version of it, and they set it up as like, oh, go with your friend, and like I was very shocked that he ended up killing him. Yeah, I thought for sure he'd spare his life, but again, I like that they stayed true to that's the Fremen's way. He did it the Fremen's way, and I guess it's Zendaya's character that is going to be the friend. But
so that's one way. One way is that he's seeing possible futures that don't come to fruition due to choices that Paul makes. The other way is that he is having a vision of the man who is going to shepherd him in the way of the desert, and by shepherding Paul in the way of the desert, that is by killing him. Yeah, that is the way of the desert. Yeah. So he needs to die. Like he's saying, it's cool that you get to see like the hints of the sandworm writing and stuff with him being like, I'll show you the way and I'll show you how to do this.
Yeah.
And that there's a tragedy and a loss to that, which I like a little bit. And this goes to the other things. I remember you, Thor, saying that someone was very confused about where they ended the movie, who had read the books. And a lot of people think plot-wise, it makes more sense. There's a time jump in Dune. There's a couple year time jump, about 2/3 of the way through the book.
Right.
And I assume
that's how we end up getting his sister and things like that. So.
Yeah, you get his sister, and Paul's like already like leading the Fremen against the Harkonnens and all that kind of stuff.
Which brings me to I know you want to finish your point, but I'd really like to see what you think. What are we going to see in Villeneuve's? What are we going to see in his sequel? What can we expect based on what you've seen in the first one in the next whatever two years or however long it takes us to get the sequel?
Okay. I'll answer that in 1 second.
Yes.
But the reason why the battle with Jabez is the end is the perfect ending point. It's a plot point, but it's a character choice. That's one of the choice. There are a series of choices in the book that usually take place in hand-to-hand combat that Paul makes a very clear decision to do what is going to keep him in power versus run away, hide, go live your life elsewhere, do something else. And him killing Jabez and then disobeying his mother and saying, we are going into the desert, is that point. That's the first major point. That's where Paul chooses his terrible destiny. That's part one. And there's multiple choices. It's not just one thing. That mirrors literally the end of the first book with the hand-to-hand combat with Faith Rathid, where he has to fight Rathid hand-to-hand combat. So it's actually a perfect mirror of and a perfect choice, because it's every point is going to end on Paul fundamentally choosing to stay in power. And and he knows that staying in power is going to cause a global or a universal like jihad or
as,
crusade.
as the kids like to say, he's going to choose violence.
Well, yeah, he's going to choose violence.
So saying that, then, do you think that's where the second movie is going to end? Then is on his battle at the end of the book with Fayed?
Yeah, it's going to be him negotiating. He'll probably negotiate his marriage to. Will probably be introduced to Irhan. I think her name's Irhan, or Ilan or something. But she's the Emperor Shadam's daughter. It's a sham marriage because he marries Chani, but and has all of his kids with Chani. But
right.
Now, yeah, like Zendaya. So if reading the books, and if it's not so much in David Lynch's Dune, because they rush through the second half of that book like in 40 minutes in that movie, which is insane. But like, Chani is like one of the most important characters in the entire series, like for the first two books.
I hope so, because I really felt like that, and again, I just being selfish, they did so much setup with her character, and it's just like visions of her, and it's like, man, I want to, let's get into that.
Oh, I mean, he's probably going to lean more into it than it's present in the books. I mean, he said that Chani's the main character of the second movie, and he's not
very cool.
He's not very wrong. Like, it's my two characters. If I looked at two characters who I thought were the actual protagonists of the Dune series, it's Stilgar and Chani. Stilgar rules for like all those books. He's just a dude who wants to live in the desert and deal with he's tired of dealing with these weird alien children. Just wants to live in the desert and do his desert thing, which, by the way, is the perfect casting, because Javier Bardem nails that is fucking Stilgar.
That was one of my. I did not know, of all the star-studded people in this movie, I did not know he was in it, and it was such a pleasant surprise.
The way he does the Jabba's fight, where he's like, "What the fuck is he doing? Is he playing with him? What are you doing?"
Yeah,
it's so great.
Yeah.
It's so
is he
great.
Messing with him?
Yeah, it's like, what the fuck is he doing? Like, that's not like it's so great. And then also just he's like, "That is all I have to say to you.
Yeah,
goodbye." Like,
well, we're just like anything having to do with Dune, we just don't have enough time to get all the way into it. But Max, I apologize for offending you.
No, you're fine. The one thing I will say,
hopefully we don't have to do the Fremen fight to the death, but we'll definitely have you on for Cowboy Bebop and a bunch of other things that you are all things knowing about. And thanks for coming on and putting me in my place. I got to run.
Yeah.
But again, thanks for the insight, and I hope you got through most of your spicy takes.
Most of them. I just want to see what Denny's going to do if we're ever going to see the Spacing Guild people, because that's the weird shit that I would be fascinated to see what he does with.
Yeah.
We'll see.
All right, folks. Well, that's we're out of time for today, so that wraps up our Dune part 1, part 2. So
our Dune over,
our Dune over, or our redune, however you want to call it. But like, share, subscribe, follow along. We're gonna have lots more content, like Eric said, Cowboy Bebop, and we got more Star Wars and more Marvel. So hang out, come join the fun, comment, let us know what you think. Otherwise, we'll talk to you next time.
See you, everybody.
All right.